Well, thank you very much. After that introduction, I think I just better sit down and remain quiet. Could we do something about the lights that are raking on the screen? We had a setup before, I think, where we turned these lights off. Great, okay. Now you can doze off without being disturbed. I gather that last year, about this time, you had a visit from a French philosopher named Jacques Rancière. So you might think of this as the sequel to that visit. As you know, Rancière wrote a book called The Future of the Image. And 1 year ago, I was asked by Columbia University, Rancière and I were asked to engage in a debate on the question of the future of the image. It turned out not to be really a debate, not very fiery. We discovered a few differences, and I will talk about them. But this is the other half of that dialogue, in which we were asked to do that most mechanical kind of exercise to compare and contrast our positions on the question of what the future of the image might be. So this is an attempt to tell some stories about the image, short stories, long stories, and in between. There are, I think, and Rancière and I immediately agreed on this, there are two dominant stories out there in the world about the future of the image. One is that there is no future to the image. The image is done with. The digitization has eliminated the image. There's nothing now but code. Zeros and ones. You all remember that moment in the film The Matrix when Cypher is looking at the computer monitor and there's nothing but alphanumeric ciphers flowing up and down. And Neo asks him, "What are you looking at?" And he says, "Oh, I'm watching the Miss Universe contest." After a while, the code becomes transparent. So that's one story. The image is gone. There is no future to it. The future is code, ones and zeros. The other story of the future is just the opposite. The image is and will be everything. It's taking over. There is nothing outside the image. The world is drowned in images, in simulations and simulacra. This is the story that was made famous, I think, in the 80s by Jean Baudrillard. So you might think of them as the all or nothing versions of the story of the future of the image. Either it's going to be everything or it's going to be nothing. Rancière and I agreed on that there must be a third story to be told, and so that's what this is about. Rancière opened his book, The Future of the Image, by declaring that he didn't want to do the obvious thing. He says, "I'm not going to provide a panoramic survey or odyssey which would take us from the Aurorian glory of Lascaux's paintings to the contemporary twilight of a reality devoured by media images and an art doomed to monitors and synthetic images." I'm quoting the opening lines of his book. Instead, Rancière said, he would give us some reflections on the labor of art on the image that provide on images that provide art's raw materials. The non-artistic image is, for Rancière, what he calls a simple copy, what will suffice as a substitute for whatever it represents. And this is one place where, as you will see, we begin to diverge rather radically, because I don't believe in the notion that the images are raw material. I think they come to us already cooked. But you might think of what I'm going to do as taking the road that Rancière decided not to take. And you will see right away that I am going to take us from the cavernous gloom of Lascaux to the contemporary twilight of synthetic images. And just to be consistent in subject matter, I'm going to follow this as an animal trail. that begins with the familiar bisons and horses of Lascaux and ends with a futuristic image of a futuristic animal, a digital dinosaur from the film Jurassic Park. So you might think of these as the beginning and end of the story I want to tell. Now, you're probably asking yourself, why should the long journey of the image from the deep past, the earliest images made by human beings, to the contemporary moment of virtual, imaginary, and futuristic images, why should we exemplify that not with the image of man or woman, the human fabricator and implied beholder of these images, but by images of animals? Why make this an animal fable? What is it about animal images that provides a clue to the entire odyssey of the image and allows us to glimpse the future of the image? We'll hold that question for a minute. I'm going to come back to it. Before I talk about it, though, I just want you to look at these two images carefully for a few minutes. Among the many speculations about the function of the Lascaux images is the notion that they were a ritualistic teaching machine in which a quasi-Platonic cinema was being staged prior to the hunt in order to familiarize the hunters with their prey, producing a virtual rehearsal that would, by a kind of homeopathic magic, ensure the success of the hunt. It was sort of a preview, in other words. No doubt the smoky atmosphere and the ingestion of appropriate stimulants helped to heighten the hallucinogenic, dreamlike atmosphere of the cave, which becomes a place for using images to project and control an immediate and very possible future. Similarly, the scene in Jurassic Park takes place in the control room of the park, which has just been invaded by a real, not imaginary velociraptor that has accidentally turned on the film projector showing the park's orientation film. The raptor is caught in the projector beam at the moment when the film is showing the DNA sequence that made it possible to clone a real live dinosaur from its fossil remains. So if you imagined a real bison galloping into the caves of Lascaux and threatening to trample the hunters, you would have a Paleolithic version of the effect produced in the projection room of Jurassic Park. So I want you to think of these two images then as an allegory of the beginning and the end of the odyssey of the image.